Welcome to the Admin Insights podcast. I'm Scott Fisher, the head of U.S. Market Development for GAT Labs. My guest today is Simon Swist from Posit. Hey, Simon, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me today. Before we talk about your experience with the GAT tools, can you tell me a bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I have been in IT for roughly 13 years. I started in a web development company, and prior to being in IT, I was in the military in a non-IT related role.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. And so about 13 years ago, I switched careers into IT. Started at a web development company, very small little shop. I think there were like 60 employees there. And quickly became their sole IT person, and drank from the fire hose there. And then moved to different orgs throughout my career, some big, some small, some medium size, and spent about the first half of my career in Windows environments, in traditional AD kind of on-prem, type of environment, which gave me a good baseline for when I decided that, I was, Google became a thing, and Google Workspace, and I became a huge fan of that personally, and decided that I wanted to, and then also moving out of Windows and becoming more Mac focused as far as like hardware goes and that kind of stuff. And that all kind of really springboarded for me when I became the lead network engineer for a school district, for the Madison School District. I spent about 3 years there, and that really spent a lot of time, developing myself more on that end of things, becoming an expert as much as I could, at least, in Google Workspace and Chromebooks and all that good stuff that they have at school districts, and then obviously on the more power user side on Macs and stuff like that. I rolled out Jamf there, and got into MDM and all that stuff, and Then I went to another org for a short period of time after that school district. And then now for the last a little over 3 years, I've been at Posit. Posit is a data science software company. We make tools for data science and software communication, scientific communication. It's an incredibly innovative company. It's a really exciting place to work. As an IT person, a lot of folks work at organizations, where you have kind of IT is expected to be the technology experts for everything, right? In
a school.
Right, like in a school. Yeah, you're the central hub of everything. I used to joke that if it plugs into the wall, you're in charge of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Toaster oven's broken in the faculty room. Come fix it.
Yes, exactly. Posit, I'm very fortunate to work here because of the type of folks that work here are all like incredibly technically savvy. And it's not to say that those that makes my job easier. It pushes me to kind of meet them where they are, right? I get a lot of very interesting questions, a lot of very interesting use cases and asks. Things are very much kind of, and by things I mean solutions are kind of run through the ringer here by a lot of very incredibly smart people. And I get to work, the other IT folks on my team are all best in breed,
So that's good. That pushes you. You to do more. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I love where I am, and it's been a great ride so far. That's kind of my story. Yeah.
So now in the environment that you're in now, is everybody remote, or is it a hybrid situation?
We have an office in Boston. It is kind of like the company hub, I guess you could say. We've always had an office in Boston. I should say Posit has existed for since 2014, I believe, 2013 or 2014. And we used to be RStudio. So a lot of people in the data science world, or most people in the data science world, know the R language and the RStudio IDE. And RStudio as a company, we decided roughly right around the time actually that I joined, that we didn't want to just be the R company. We wanted to be multilingual. So, and Python is a huge portion of that data science community, and it's one of the largest, data science languages out there. So we rebranded right around the time I joined,
Perfect
which was
timing.
also incredibly, as an IT person, an incredibly interesting thing to do, because it's almost as if you're starting a new company again.
Yeah.
Right? You have to rebrand everything. In a lot of cases, a lot of SaaS products, you have to start a new tenant, migrate everybody over to that new tenant, so on and so forth. Luckily with Google, it wasn't that complicated. But yeah, so yes, everybody's remote. We do have a Boston office. So we have employees all over the place.
Very cool. Very exciting stuff. I know it's a big change for you from what you were doing in the schools, but it sounds like it's been a positive move for you. So I'm glad everything is working out for you there. So let's turn and talk a little bit about GAT, and
Sure.
maybe if you could share initially what led you to explore the GAT tools for managing your Google Workspace in the enterprise environment you're in now.
Sure. So Posit, and formerly RStudio, was always a Google shop, and always had a Google Workspace domain, and it was managed well, for the size of the company, and kind of what changed over time was the complexity of things, higher headcount, and just, again, like more complexity, and also more security controls. In the time that I've been here on my sister team, the security operations team, they have developed, they've matured quite a bit, as have we. And with that come, kind of more standardized controls and issues that need to be solved to mitigate risk, and so on and so forth. So we did have some tools, and we also had some folks on my team who had prior experience with GAT. And so we decided that we kind of needed to level up a little bit in how we manage our Google Workspace environment. The other challenge, I guess I should say, that we have here is that we try to remain as lean as possible. So therefore, we do rely on tooling quite a bit to keep it that way, right? So we don't have to increase our headcount astronomically while our company's complexity and headcount is growing. So it is a challenge, but that can be mitigated by getting the proper tooling in place to help you run your environment in a secure way and in the way that it needs to be done. So some folks with prior experience, particularly my boss, Joe, who's the senior director of IT ops here. He had previously used GAT in another organization. And I had heard of GAT before. I had actually heard about it when I worked at Matatuck, when I worked at the school district. That's where I first heard about it. And, it never came to pass that we needed it in that environment. But and I heard about it in another organization. So then, we had some challenges around granular management of certain things, calendar management, docs management, especially around like DLP and PCI, not PCI, sorry, PII, and stuff like that. Just your kind of your standard things you want to have control of in an organization, document classification, and sharing permissions. That's a big one that we've actually recently kind of made a lot of changes around. So I think what was it, February or March? We brought you guys on board. So it hasn't been a ton of time yet. So there's a pretty big wish list / backlog of things that we need to implement in GAT. But we, one of the big things that we've done, the biggest thing that comes to mind is when we had this issue, and this is just, it's a default setting in Google Workspace when you spin it up that allows everybody within Google Drive to share documents with anyone with link out on the public internet. It's something that you just, unless you don't know about, right? We knew about it. And we completely solved that issue in a very automated and very user-friendly way with GAT by creating a scheduled report, that was a report only, didn't take action, to users saying, hey, you have the following documents that are shared with anybody with link. Now, with a few exceptions, most people in our organization actually didn't even know this.
Yeah.
We have automations that run, for instance, when an employee leaves the company, after I think about 48 hours, their Google Drive documents are transferred to their manager automatically. And just for, data retention and, all that good stuff. It's pretty standard practice in most Google
Right.
organizations, or any organization, I would hope. So, over time, managers, and especially people like executives who've been here, people with basically the longer you've been here, the more folders you would have of things that people had made years ago, that were shared out there in the internet with any link. The easy fix is to just remove that permission. So notify the organization, using our own channels, but also with the scheduled task, with a scheduled task to email them from GAT, saying not only, hey, you have this stuff shared with any link, here's our documentation on what we're talking about. And then it also lists out what documents they are. Some people, it was like, 5 or 6 things, and they were able to go in and change it themselves. We let that run. And actually it's still running, that email notification every 24 hours. So a user will get that email every 24 hours, unless they don't have anything shared out with any other link, then they don't get the email. And then, some folks had like thousands of documents. We were able to go into GAT and very easily, with a few clicks, filter out, a search in Drive owned by X person, and with the sharing permission of everyone with link, and go in and remove the permission with like a few clicks, and the problem is solved for them. Of course, there are some exceptions to that, which we had to kind of engineer around. But because then what we then consequently did was go into Google Admin and change the setting so that you can't now do that by default. So you can't share with anyone with link anymore. So unless you're part of our exception group. So GAT was doing that without GAT would have been a humongous lift. We did have some other tools, we do use and had some other things prior that we could have done that with, but it would have been a lot of scripting, a lot of kind of custom tooling and stuff like that. GAM, right? Everybody knows about GAM.
That's the big one, and people don't realize. I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but everybody talks about GAM, and nothing against GAM, but it's kind of apples and oranges. I mean, do they both accomplish similar tasks? Yeah, but they're not true comparisons. I mean, GAT can do so much more for you. And as you're pointing out, there's no scripting involved. And I think that's a huge benefit to our product over GAM is, you don't have to know how to write scripts. You don't have to do anything like that. It's all done for you through an interface.
Right. Yeah. Here's kind of my overall thought on Google Workspace and how GAT is valuable is that Google Workspace has let's separate out their interface and their APIs, right?
Okay.
Their interface is, their functionality, I guess you could say their APIs are very there's so many options. There's so many things you can do with their API calls, right? And then once you kind of compare that to what you can do in the admin interface in Google Admin, it takes you a long time fumbling through to try and find the right thing, using the investigation tool. And not that these things are bad. They work just fine for most people, I think, especially smaller organizations. But it takes too much time to kind of, what we needed was a UI that directly matched kind of the full functionality of Google Admin's APIs. And that you can do that with GAM, right? GAM is basically just an overlay over Google's APIs, right?
Exactly.
And GAT is essentially, there's obviously way more to it, but it's a UI and overlay over the Google APIs, and it just depends on a build or buy situation sometimes, right? Again, we need to remain a lean, high functioning team for medium size. We have about 400, I think at this point, around 450 employees here. So, and once you hit that size, you need to start utilizing the more granular functionality of a system that's so important and so vital to the organization as Google Workspace is. I mean, it's our whole productivity suite. It's essentially our directory. Although we're an Okta organization too.
Right.
But you know, yeah, you need to have that kind of ability to utilize more granular functionality, and GAT has 100% let us do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds to me like it was kind of perfect timing, with the rebranding and everything, and the company sort of taking a look internally or using the opportunity, bringing you on board, taking the opportunity to say, hey, let's see what we've been doing for all these years. And since we're starting fresh, essentially trying to, rebrand ourselves and so forth, let's start off on the right foot. So I think it was good timing that you came on board. They brought you on board, obviously, and the GAT tool helped you in many regards. I mean, as you know, I'm a former customer of GAT, and one of the things I always liked about it is exactly what you're talking about. The ability to get very granular, to create the complex filters, to be able to find all the information I want, and then be able to do whatever I want with it. I mean, in addition to the GAT, like you mentioned, you have the unlock portion that allowed you to then change the rights, take away the ability take away the shared feature or the shared functionality of making things available to the public and so forth. So it was nice for me, because I too was using multiple products to do different things, and the Google Admin Console, bring it all in one place and say, I can do this all, very, very easily here. I mean, it's simple things. You talk about some of the challenges of the console. Well, the Admin Console is obviously fully functional. But it's simple things like I notice, like we happen to bring up, if we're doing a demo, so we'll point out to people little things that we've come across that people go, wow, that sounds simple, but it's really pretty smart. Like email delegation. We can show you with one click any account that has an email delegate set up on it. Where can you do that in the admin console? Yeah, absolutely you can, but it's not as straightforward as that. So we try to bring the things, and the cool thing about GAT, now that I'm on the inside seeing it, I'm just more and more impressed each day, is how responsive the engineering team is and the developers are. Because if someone like you comes to us as a customer and says, look, this is what I'm looking for, and here's why, it quickly gets evaluated. And if it's something that's worthwhile for all the customers, or at least the majority of customers, and it's not going to impact any of the customers negatively, of course, they'll put it in very, very quickly. And it's not this, okay, we do a release once a year and, you'll have to wait. They're constantly pushing out releases with patches, or not patches. I want to actually be fair and say they're enhancements, because they're not problems. They're recommendations or requests for, things to be added to the program. So very responsive with regard to that. And it's that type of thing you don't get, when you're using GAM, who do you call, or even some of the other products. I've worked with some of the other ones. I'm not going to get into names, but it was always very challenging, and it felt like, okay, yeah, it's on our list of future enhancements. Okay, well, when will it be implemented? We don't know. It could be Q3 of 5 years from now.
Right.
Like it was never right away, where the immediacy here, I'm not going to, have to be honest, you tell us today something needs to be added. It's not like, every time it gets added. But if it's important, and if there's a really strong case for it, they do take it very seriously, and they can implement changes very quickly. And in the very few instances where we actually have noticed a problem, a customer has brought a problem to our attention, those get fixed, instantly. There's no delay with that. So I'm glad you're finding a similar experience using the product, using the GAT Plus and the unlock and so forth. But have you worked with Flow at all? Have you had any reason to work with Flow at this point?
We haven't had a reason yet. Again, we've only been a GAT customer since earlier this year. So in combination with some other projects we have going on, we haven't been able to look at that yet. But I do see a ton of potential there, for automating certain tasks, right? We do already use a lot of automation here through a different platform that, again, kind of the same thing. You have to go out, you have to search the API, you have to call the API, because sometimes that connection isn't built into this automation platform that we use. And, you have to build these custom solutions. You're still on that thing. But having an automation platform that is built specifically for Google Workspace is incredibly valuable, and something that we're going to leverage in the future. I'm trying to think of an example. One was discussed the other day that I thought was really interesting, around contractor management and managing their, essentially their access to certain things, and that that's going to be coming down the pipeline soon.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that's an excellent use case for it. Of course, Flow, if you're not familiar with it, it can be used for onboarding and offboarding,
Yep.
but it's also for automation, and we can even do things where like, if you're getting an alert from GAT Plus, we can schedule a workflow to take place based on the alert. So, it took a DLP, some reason somebody downloaded 50 files in the last day. Okay. Well, when that alert gets set, it can have an action that triggers in the workflow to automatically change the account's password and send the user an email to their personal account saying, hey, contact the tech support office. We did this intentionally. Here's why. We just want to make sure it's on the up and up. So they work hand in hand. So it is certainly a tremendous tool for onboarding and offboarding, but it can also do a whole bunch of other workflow type of actions that I think you'll find useful. And the one you mentioned specifically about being able to bring contractors in, give them things they need to, yes, that can accomplish it very easily. But I think most importantly, it's not just bringing them on, it's when they leave. You want to make sure that when they leave, you've taken away their access to files and folders, you've disabled their accounts, all the things that they have access to, you want to do in reverse. I remember my previous life in schools, that's kind of where we came up short sometimes. We always did the right thing, pushing things out there and getting things set up, but it was the afterwards, going back and cleaning up. The teacher's no longer in the school district, so they've retired or they've moved on, or the students have graduated or left the school for whatever. Just making sure that you do the cleanup. So the cool thing about GAT was always, it gave me great insight into all of that information. And then I could take action using some of the other tools. So I could quickly see who hasn't logged into their account in a year. Well, who has a Google account that they haven't used in a year? There must be a reason for it. Let's take a closer look, those types of things. So I'm glad you're getting some real benefit from this. If you had to sort of summarize like the most significant benefit or the transformation, sort of on top of what you talked about already, what advice would you offer to anybody else, other Google Workspace enterprise admins that might be considering GAT?
The number one thing that comes to mind is the ability to learn anything about your Google environment in a very, very short amount of time. Something, reporting up to, your security team, or if you are also the security team, the ability to get the information about your environment is how you know that there are problems to solve or there are improvements to make. So without that information from the get-go, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And GAT is incredibly useful for that type of just gathering that information initially. And I think to a certain extent, we've taken some action on some stuff. We have used GAT tooling. I think we are still kind of in that phase of learning about, you have to remember, Posit has been a Google organization its entire existence, but only really up until the last 3-4 years have we needed to get deeper insights into things and to harden our environment a little bit more and kind of mature it, so to say. So having a tool like GAT to, if we didn't have GAT, doing that kind of discovery would take infinitely longer than what we do if we have it. And it just, if security asks me, hey, what users have X amount of permissions with whatever, or how many I mean, a simple thing is how many calendars do we have in the company, things like that, because, people are able to make their own calendars. Teams are able to have shared calendars and, and same with share drives and folders and stuff like that. Another, huge thing for us that came to mind when we were talking about Flow just now is actions around data classification and DLP stuff, right?
Sure.
That is something that we tried to do a little bit of prior to having GAT. For instance, Google, not too long ago, I want to say a year or two ago, came out with the whole drive labels thing. And we saw that. We initially kind of started playing with it and using it as a data classification tool. Our security team has an entire policy on, what kind of files are classified in what kind of way based off of like a tier system, whether it's confidential or public or, however you want to classify it. And they, GAT now we're playing with GAT a little bit on kind of supplementing that drive labeling thing, saying, okay, search all of our documents in Google Workspace for X keywords or PII or financial information and stuff like that, getting that answer. And then once we have that answer, we can come up with a better and a solution that has as little impact to user experience, but as much impact to our security posture. That's kind of the dance, right? And we're just looking into that. We haven't implemented stuff like that yet, but we are looking into not just labeling documents and having automatically, and not having one of the problems with drive labels inherently is that it takes a lot of user interaction to like properly label them. And we don't want users to do anything because you know what? They're not going to do it.
Right. You can automate it and handle it for them. You're better off. You can mark it confidential. You can mark it sensitive. You can mark it, whatever the case might be.
It has IP addresses in it, and has credit card numbers in it, and has social security numbers in it. Not that we have really any, stuff like that, but I mean, we don't know what we don't know, but with GAT we do know. So now we can classify things correctly and then set permissions automatically to those assets in an automated way.
Well, that's great. I'm glad you're finding the products to be so useful. I do want to take the opportunity to mention to you, I mentioned before about the phenomenal support team here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to plug them again because they do a great job. But I'm also going to plug them because as a customer, I just want you to be aware that you can set up a scheduled time with them anytime you want to walk you through whatever new use for the product you're talking about, whether it's flow or whether, whatever it might be doing, we can set up a time to work with you. And I'll put in the show notes when we're done. We started doing a new thing now, which I think is a really great feature. We're doing, I'll call them regular live sessions or trainings. So it's group instruction, if you will, but it's live. It's in real time, so you can interact with the person providing the training. So we pick a topic, and each week or so, each couple of weeks, the topics are rotating through. But you might find a topic of specific use to you or something you're trying to do, and you can sit in on it. You can watch them. They'll walk you through it. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure you've probably been through our knowledge base. You realize the knowledge base is extensive and it's very much step by step. They do a really good job of that. But it's always nice to have a person to say, just walk me through it, and as they walk you through it, to be able to pop a question up and say, here's a specific question I have. And they're very good about responding to your specific, or saying to you, look, we'll talk to you offline one-on-one, but they'll always get back to you. So anyway, I'll put that up in the show notes because we have lots of resources. So I'm sure you'll be able to work with a support team to do whatever it is that you're looking to do moving forward. So
I've had to engage with the support team a couple times, and it's been, just for questions, right? And it's super, that's one of the great things. And it's when we're going out and looking at any vendor to work with, we kind of want to find, us as an organization at Posit, we have kind of the same, we have exactly the same mentality of support is like customer support is a huge thing, and it's a make or break thing. And finding partners and vendors that we work with internally as well that kind of can match that for us is enormous. Trust me, as an admin, my least favorite thing is poor documentation, and it's or documentation that's overly complex, or and it's a hard thing to do, right? It's a hard thing to boil things down to an easily digestible format for folks, especially people who are doing multiple things at once and need the answer, right? GAT is very good at that. It's been excellent. I've reached out a couple of times with questions, very specific questions, and they get answered, and even in some ways they get answered. And there's a scenario where something came up and the answer was unique that I would have never thought of. So
great. Well, I'm glad you've had a positive experience with the support team as well. We get a lot of feedback from customers saying that that's one of the strong points, as you've mentioned, is it's great to have a very responsive support team. Product's great, does everything I need it to do, but it's also an added bonus that in the few times I have had to reach out to support, I get a very immediate response and a very helpful response. So I'm glad your experience has been the same with that. Well, Simon, thank you. It's been great catching up with you today. I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
I really appreciate it, Scott. Thank you.